Oops.
All right, it's April 5th, 2022. I'm going to call, it's 7:07 p.m. I'm going to call the special meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission to order. Members present: Joe Hall, Bob Shabbat, Rebecca Sanowski, and myself. And we have item C, presentation and discussion of affordable housing recommendations until 7:30.
Okay, so as part of the agenda, or I guess backing up, we did a discussion at the couple of meetings ago about some of the potential recommendations or potential things that the commission could consider as far as the implementation phase of the affordable housing plan is concerned. Different things that we could avail ourselves to, and we had a long list of sort of menu options of regulatory changes and procedural things and process stuff, and some really big heavy lifts and other things that were very easy to do. And started sort of looking at those. The commission, we kind of went through, and there were a few that were more interesting and made more sense for Wellington. So what we did is took those more appropriate suggestions and we kind of fleshed them out a little bit more to give folks a better idea of what they would look like, what they would involve, just to make it a little bit easier to sort of frame those. And Rachel can kind of go through each one of those, and I think we can take questions as we go. Does that make sense to you, Rachel?
Yeah, I think so. Interrupt at any point. I'm just going to share my screen. Oh, I need you to allow me to share my screen.
Okay, I can do that. All right, give it a shot.
Okay. Okay, so I just want to reiterate that these are just basically the suggestions that you'd be recommending to the town of Willington. So like, you don't have to have like a thorough plan to actually implement any of these yet. This is just like a starting point. Okay, so this first one is basically creating a municipal webpage that would have different town policies related to housing, different funding resources, and information, basically links to information regarding housing and affordable housing in general. And I have an example of a website. I think I have to reshare this though. Can you see this website or should I reshare?
No, it's not working.
Okay. Oh, I see what I have to do. Okay. You should be able to see the website now, I think. But so this is an example from Salisbury. They have a pretty good housing website that features information about their like housing committee. They have resources plugged, pretty much just like general guidance stuff for different things. They have information about who's on the committee, information about their housing trust, and they update with some news about affordable housing in town. So that is pretty basic. Okay, I have to reshare.
Here comes John.
The second recommendation would be reducing or eliminating minimum lot sizes in favor of soil-based zoning, eliminating arbitrary minimum dwelling unit sizes in favor of public health and building codes instead. So basically, instead of just setting an arbitrary kind of 2-acre minimum lot size like Willington has, the town can use soil types instead to determine how much density a lot can actually have. And this would be done with just a soil scientist coming out and testing the soil at an applicant's expense. And the South Wellington Village mixed use zone that you guys have all been talking about, that does look at soil capacity to determine densities, just the same for multifamily dwellings of 5 or more units. There's a couple other towns or several other towns in Connecticut who are also doing this. In Washington's zoning regulations, they just have a chart from the US Department of Agriculture and like soil conservation that has all the different soil types, and then a chart with like the densities, which I think is down here. So they have like different classes for the different soil types and then an associated maximum density. And this is a map from Kent that shows they already know what all their soils are in different areas. They only use the soil types for, I think, residential lots. So these are 2 good examples. This is, let's zoom out. This is a plan that was for a 4-plex in Woodbridge. This is just to say that I think this was on like a 1.8 acre lot, and it's a 4-family multifamily home, so it can be supported. The third recommendation is allowing for middle density housing as of right in targeted areas and as larger historic home retrofits. So again, like harkening back to the ideas in the South Wellington Village mixed use zone, idea of allowing mixed use or more flexible development standards that are encouraging mixed use and denser development in the areas where you want it. And specifically in terms of where you want to allow multifamily, allowing that where the soil capacity allows. So as part of this plan, we could identify some additional areas to target for that middle density housing, or you could simply recommend that that gets looked into as part of the plan's implementation. And then these are 2 images of, this is a duplex up above and then a 4-plex down below, I think. So that's just kind of like what it would look like, nothing too crazy.
That one on the bottom looks like an older home that got converted in the city.
Yeah, I think it definitely looks like that. I thought it was interesting how they have like 4 doors on the bottom, like all separate entrances, which is nice. Our 4th recommendation would be creating the zoning regulations for cottage clusters, incentivizing starter houses and pocket neighborhoods. We talked about this a little bit last time and people seemed interested. But basically a cottage cluster is a handful of smaller cottages that share a common green space kind of yard area. They usually have like parking in the back, their own set of like design standards. They're really good for seniors because they tend to be 1-story homes and smaller and less expensive. It's also a good situation for parents who want to share like childcare responsibilities, as well as young people who want to buy their first home, and just people who want to save money in general with housing costs. You can regulate these in a ton of different ways, and you can restrict them to seniors or low-income seniors or low-income in general, just like requiring a certain percentage set aside as affordable. And they're usually built in residential districts where there's already like single family houses because they fit in pretty well. I have a picture, a couple pictures actually. This is like more of an illustration, but
You're going to put 12 homes on an acre. What kind of square footage are you looking at for each one?
the ones I've seen are usually I think 1,000 square feet. I think it kind of depends on what you're working with the land, but so this is an example from Groton. They allow the cottage clusters in residential districts, as well as I think, yeah, they're mixed use and their multifamily zones. They have a maximum density of 12 cottages per acre. And I think, oh yeah, they have a minimum of 6 cottage units. So it can be smaller, it can be larger. And they require they all face each other. And they have some design standards as well down here.
One of the things, how does that work when, like in Willington, where we haven't got sewage? And then you start thinking about the separation you need from your water well and your sewage disposal area.
You'd almost have to have a common one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think a lot of them tend to have a common shared septic water
Okay.
system.
Yep. Yep. Okay.
But yeah, a lot would depend on what, like, a lot of the ones I was seeing are already on like infill sites, so they've already had houses on them before. So some of them already are, you know, all set to get hooked up if the density is small enough.
Yeah. Okay.
This is like one plan for them, common space.
We've
Sheds.
actually, the one that's just on the bottom of the screener that she's getting to, this Riverwalk. We've had, I mean, in the last 3 years, probably 4 different people ask if something like this would be allowed in Willington. And most recently, probably a month and a half ago, if that, and they would probably need to be on a community well and septic. But you know, I think it's something that a lot of people are interested in, and when they start talking about like this downsizing trend, a lot of these folks are looking for, they're not quite looking for an assisted living type facility, right? They want that single family independence, but they don't want the maintenance. I think this is something that is going to become very popular very soon.
Hey, Mike, I saw a development somewhere in Massachusetts one time. It was much like this, where there was densely packed small homes. And what the developer had done was he dedicated one of the homes to be a sewage processing plant. It looked just like every other home, but it had the, you know, you walk in, there's no floors. There was this giant tank in which, you know, everything had to be processed. And everybody that lived there and owned a home there, they all shared in the costs related to upkeep and maintenance of that facility. And, you know, they had to pay to hire somebody to run the facility, et cetera. I wonder if something like that could be allowed here in Wellington.
Yeah,
But
I mean,
that would be with like a regular sewer, right?
Yeah.
No, they from there, they sent it out to a leach field. They processed it in-house and then sent it to a leach field. And I think occasionally they had to like truck some of the stuff off-site to a sewage treatment facility. But for the most part, they processed it and sent clean water out to a leach field.
Okay.
It was a really interesting setup.
Yeah, I think these are really interesting, like especially in Willington's case, where you guys don't want to make housing that immediately gets like swallowed up by college students. This is like really attractive to like young wannabe homeowners and seniors and groups like that instead. And then
that
go ahead,
project
sorry.
there that she's showing, the site plan, and then this photo, that is Massachusetts.
Yeah, that's Concord, Mass.
Okay.
That, you know, the one thing that is always, it always kind of comes up is a lot of people like this idea of these cottage clusters, these cottage communities, but you very rarely see good examples of them on the East Coast because we deal with winter, and they're, you know, it's not the same thing where you just kind of throw it up on a piece of property and, you know, the winters doesn't get very cold and they don't have to deal with that. This is the first really good example that we've been able to find that's close to home. I'm trying to see if I can get a better copy of the site plan to see if they were doing water and sewer on site or not. But
That's kind of hard to see.
That doesn't look like it would work for seniors. You park your car far away, then you got to go up those sidewalks and everything.
yeah, I think it depends on who the ultimate user is. You know, you may have some of the buildings, you know, on the right side of the screen, for example, you know, maybe some of the buildings are more age restricted, and then the buildings on the left are for more active adult. But it's, this is certainly something on my end that I would be very interested in you guys being interested in, because I think that,
Yeah.
you know, this is an opportunity for us to you know, create density in locations where we have a large amount of land, but because of ledge or other things, it's not all viable. You know, you can nestle these in, and we can get basically an open space development, you know, traditionally, but with smaller houses and a lot less design and infrastructure costs, because they're not putting in, you know, $1 million worth of road, which then the town needs to maintain and keep forever. So I think it's an interesting idea.
So where would you propose putting these in town?
I think that what we would probably want to do, if we decided that we liked this idea well enough to explore, you know, would be to start with a little bit of a GIS analysis to get a sense of how many residential properties we have that are, you know, in excess of something like 5 acres, to just see how they could be supported. And then we would write a set of regs that required citing on something about that size. I'm looking to see how big that parcel is. And I can't get a size on the plan.
Hey, Mike, doesn't Tolland have something similar to that just off of the green behind the old jail? I think it's a senior thing, but there's parking in the front. And, you know, the comment was made, well, seniors wouldn't want to walk. Everybody parks their car in the parking lot, and then they walk back into the units. It's right off of 74, off of the green.
Yeah.
There.
They're not, I don't think it's designed with the same level of amenities or, you know, these are really inherently communities. They're really meant to be something like that. I think that folks, you know, 50 plus are probably the age bracket. I don't think you're going to see a young family buying a house here in this type of development. So I think it's just that idea that it's less demanding. They wouldn't necessarily need to be restricted if the town wanted to require a restriction, or they were completely affordable units and they had those restrictions. Then obviously it could be something that included the age and income limits, but it could be either or, both or neither. But at roughly $250 a square foot of construction cost right now, there's a significant reduction in the infrastructure costs, which is why these can become more viable.
Yeah. Yeah, too many of the 55 developments, it seems like everybody wants to downsize, but they end up having a house with an awful lot of amenities, and the cost is up around 300,000 or more, you know?
Yeah.
This is just this is definitely not a cottage community, but the Ledges in Madison is a good example of using space creatively. I think this, well, Mike can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure it was like a huge house or mansion type thing, and they converted it to condos.
So the building on the left, the large building on the left,
big
is
one.
existing.
And then they built the condos to kind of like reflect like the general character of the area. That's a cool project.
And obviously this is, you know, there's a market component to these things, right? I mean, this is a much higher end type of project, but I think the idea is if you get to a point where there's interest and the densities are correct, you can have things that look nice and have these projects, happen. But the main focus to this is to show, yeah, this is on less than 2 acres and it's 7 units. That fourplex that we showed at the top was on about 1.5 acres, and it was 4 units. And the key to that rendering that was submitted to the town of Woodbridge, and they do not allow anything but single family. So basically a group of 4 attorneys got together, they had this project designed, and they submitted an application to P&Z with the sole intent of, they'll deny it because they don't allow multifamily, and then we'll take them to court and we'll basically prove that you can't exclude all residential units. But the idea here is you have 4 units, you have a septic system and a well, and you have a structure that looks like a house. We couldn't get the color rendering of that, but the idea is when you pass by that, you don't think, oh, there's that apartment complex. And if you look there at that top piece, you see there's the well, you see the septic. You're not dealing with massive amounts of coverage or anything. This it doesn't look any different than a house, and it's really all.
Is this an apartment or is this a condominium?
I don't know ultimately, because I don't even know if it's yet approved. I don't know what the ownership was going to be, if they worked that part out. But anyway.
Yeah, the cottage clusters are definitely a cool idea. All right. The 5th recommendation is promoting accessory dwelling units as a concept to property owners in town and allowing ADUs as of right to conform with Public Act 2129. So already Willington zoning regs allow ADUs in the R80 zone by special permit, but they're more like family apartments. They can only be occupied by people related by blood, adoption, or marriage. So this would be allowing property owners a lot more flexibility with their properties, giving them a potential second source of income, and basically allow them to double the densities on their lots.
What could possibly go wrong with this? What could possibly go wrong?
The good news is, because we have to do it because of the state statutes, it's less our issue to sell in some ways, but for a town like Willington, close by to Yukon, it does create some additional challenges.
Yeah, these can be regulated in a lot of ways. The statute allows them to be attached, detached, internal. This image on the left is just kind of what that could possibly look like. So yeah, it's a good way to increase densities, and it shouldn't actually really alter what a neighborhood looks like.
One of the things that we can do is we can limit the size, and you can limit the bedrooms. So you can say that an ADU can't be more than 800 square feet and can, may only be a single bedroom. So, it doesn't allow them to create this big, huge addition that, has all kinds of, basically turns a single family unit into a duplex. So you can regulate the design in those ways to make it a little bit less likely that someone's going to want to rent this out to a bunch of college kids.
So you can take a subdivision with 2 acre lots, build one of these on it, put it there, rent it to a college kid if you want to, in a residential neighborhood. Am I right there?
You can require that the owner of the property live in one of the units, but you can't require that if the owner lives in one of the units, that the ADU be for a relative only. But yes, the statute basically says that we have to allow single-family homes to add these by right.
Hmm.
All right. I think of like one possible flip side of this is that it might take some pressure off of Willington's current multifamily in terms of like how many college students are staying there. It is possible this could like kind of help. The sixth recommendation is implementing inclusionary zoning on developments over a certain size. So inclusionary zoning is a policy that requires developers to set aside a certain percentage of units in a project over a certain size for low to moderate income renters. The town can really dictate what size development qualifies, what kind of development qualifies. And if a developer does not want to include affordable housing, they can actually opt out and they would pay into a housing trust fund, a fee in lieu for the development, which again would be dictated like what that actual fee structure looks like, how much that is. That money would then be going towards a housing trust fund, which Wellington could use in the future to further its affordable housing goals, whether it's constructing or rehabbing property. So yeah, the fee in lieu can be calculated a bunch of different ways. A lot of them use square footage with like a percentage of the gross residential floor area subject to the fee. For some towns, it's more of a set fee. For Tolland, 5% of total proposed units are supposed to be affordable. So their fee requires $50,000 for each unit of qualified affordable housing that would have been constructed but isn't going to be. And yeah, Willington, we talked about this a little bit last time, but Willington could also implement these regulations a little bit more specifically for expansions of apartments or rental properties over a certain size. In New Haven, I think they were specifically applying inclusionary zoning to rehabbed apartments. So that's one option. And then this is the fee structure for Mansfield's inclusionary zoning, which is a little bit more complicated. But the formula basically gives them a pretty reasonable fee in lieu, and it actually incorporates an administrative fee, which the town council decides on. And this is a calculation kind of example. So if you were going to be building 400 square foot units, 2 total dwelling units, it breaks down to about $4,000 or 3,500 fee in lieu. And then this, I don't want to get into the weeds, but this is just an example of like how much this can like be customized, I guess. It can really be suited to Willington. That's inclusionary zoning. And then we're almost at the end. Number 7 is, it kind of goes along with our first one about a municipal town website for housing, but promoting USDA and CHFA financing support programs within the real estate community. Very important for making sure people have the resources that they need to take advantage of these programs, especially in Willington, where a lot of people are homeowners or want to be homeowners. This would mean sending out flyers and pamphlets and providing different links to resources on the town website. This is just a screenshot from the CHFA website that already has a ton of resources plugged. But yeah.
I can vouch for the USDA. We have our mortgage through them. It's great.
Oh,
Great
great.
program.
Yeah, I've heard super good things. It's a really good program. But it's important that we inform people on the options, because a lot of people just have no idea it exists or like they're eligible for it in general.
Mhm.
Used to be when you'd see a listing for a house years ago, it would say whether it was CHFA eligible or whatever.
Oh,
Mm.
You know, when they'd advertise it in a real estate site.
yeah, this was a screenshot from resources specifically for real estate agents. So I think it was just kind of guidance, because I think a lot of real estate agents don't even really understand the program. And
I remember CHFA years ago, I think you had to live in the house 7 years, you know, before you could resell it or whatever, you know, if you had that type of mortgage.
oh wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of my friends went through that, and I think it was either 7 or 10 years before they could sell the house.
This is our last one, which is a recommendation to pursue partnerships with nonprofit organizations or senior housing developers. So a lot or most affordable housing development is funded through low-income housing tax credits, which are tax incentives for developers to develop this type of housing. So when a town partners with developers as like a financial partner / sponsor, it improves the chances that they get funding, because there's like a rating or ranking standard for LIHTC. So this is a really good way for Willington to be proactive. And yeah, they're very essential for the affordable housing projects. And Button Hill is a good example of this. And I just have a note here that if there's not going to be a housing committee established, it would be town staff and the Board of Selectmen dealing with this.
Mhm.
And that is it.
We got to start the regular meeting here shortly.
So just to close, I guess close the loop, do we want to, you want to take some time to look at some of these things and we can talk about them at the next meeting and just kind of, ultimately all we're doing is taking these recommendations and including them in the plan. We're not figuring this stuff out now. We're not coming up with these ideas. We're just including these as the core recommendations for further discussion as part of the plan.
I think that's what we should do, just to start the process and have a basis to work off of, Mike.
Okay.
I'd like
Is
to
there
see
any-
like a map of the town and where some of these things would be proposed, like an overlay. Like places that would be eligible for some of this.
Okay, so
Because I think by the time we go to a public hearing with any of this, that's going to be on a lot of people's minds where you guys want to put this stuff.
yeah, and we're at, the affordable housing plan we just want to have the conversation. It's almost like the POCD. We're just making a recommendation. We're not actually facilitating this, but what we can do is.
But the
Maybe we
POCD
can-
does say we're areas where you develop and everything. Like, yeah, we have the I-84 corridor up there for like commercial type stuff and everything.
Yeah, so maybe what we can do is a little bit of an analysis to get a sense of where these types of things could be supported if we have parcels that could even deal with something like this. there might be some existing zones that we can make them allowed in, like the DCR or something like that. So we can work on that.
Should we be looking to get a soils map of the town also? That's part of the plan.
We can try to pull that stuff and show you what that would look like.
I would
Okay.
think that would be available through the Soil Conservation Service.
Yeah.
I believe so, yeah.
So what we'll do is we'll take these recommendations and we'll sort of try to right size them for Willington to give you a sense of what it might actually look like for some of this stuff. Maybe make it a little bit more palatable to folks as we start moving towards a public hearing. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yes, I think, Andy, we had a little bit of a conversation last time, Mike, about for an intro, saying that after we reviewed all the proposals, these were the items that we deemed most, pertinent for the Wellington area. To let everybody know that we did review all of those things that were that huge list that we went through.
Yeah, definitely, like as part of the plan's discussion on the recommendations, we can have like a more thorough explanation of all the things that you guys considered and how what you chose makes the most sense for Willington and why.
I think that would be good.
Yeah. And these recommendations will ultimately, we'll have like an implementation table that will show the recommendation, kind of like the responsible agency or person, and then like a time frame, like a suggested time frame for that implementation.
Similar to what the POCD has listed in that. It says who
Yeah.
should be administering it and some kind of a timeline.
Yeah.
Okay, we can get working on some of that stuff. I know we're late to get the other meeting started.
All right, so we're going to move on to the other regular meeting at this point, and we start with a public hearing. PZ-22-7 zone change from R80 to design commercial, 25 Maholiak Road, owner CLB Willington LLC, applicant William Clark. Is William Clark here?
Christopher Barr, I'm representing on his end. William Clark's our surveyor on that property. I'm the owner of the property.
Okay.
So we were at the last meeting and we brought up the zoning change, and there was a gentleman that brought up that the parcel wasn't large enough for the zoning change to commercial. It turned out that that wasn't proper information, that it actually is able to become changed over to a DC zone. So we're just still looking to get that over to a conforming property as a DC zone right now.
Yeah, so just to clarify, looking at the regs afterwards, the minimum lot size in the DC is 40,000. The minimum zone size is what he was referring to. So this will become part of the DC zone that is on that side of the highway, which includes the parcel at the intersection of Loshi and then the Love's property, and then it'll continue this way. So the idea is these contiguous, let me say it a different way. The smallest area of any one zone has got to be a certain size. And so the idea is then you don't create these little pocket zones here, there, and everywhere. So the minimum lot size in the DC zone per the regs is 40,000 square feet, which is, this property is larger than that. If this,
Okay.
if this piece was standalone, it would need to meet that 10-acre minimum.
All right, refresh my memory. This is the property with the garage on it, right?
Correct.
Okay.
And just because we had a couple of different applications pending and coming in and whatever else, I did include with the agenda just some suggested motions and for you guys to just consider. I don't know if anybody saw those.
I did not see them.
I didn't.
All right, I can share my screen if you want to look at them. Ooh,
There we go.
Okay. So what are the thoughts of the commission on this before I go to the public?
I think I'm good with it.
I am too.
Yeah, I have no problem with that. There's been
Yeah.
a garage forever.
agreed.
All right. Well, with that being said, let's open up to the public and see what kind of questions, comments we get. Anyone from the public?
I don't see anybody on my side.
Okay, so I'm going to make a motion to close public hearing PZ-22-7.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay,
Thank you.
all right. So no new business tonight, but we have some unfinished business. One PZ-22-5. Amend special permit for addition to existing bottling structure. 136 Penny Hill Road, owner Patricia Castles, ETAL applicant Sean Castles. And if I recall, we were all good with this after the public hearing.
Yep, and I can share with you the suggested motion for that. All right.
I'm sorry, did we approve PZ 22-7? The one that we were
No.
just talking about?
No, we're gonna have to go and do that when we get to it.
Okay,
We just closed the
Okay,
public
sorry.
hearing, John.
okay, sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. You gonna share the motion, Mike?
Yep. Tell me if this is big enough.
All right, who wants to take a stab at this?
I'll do it.
Go for it.
So it's PZ 22-5 we're gonna read right now?
Yes.
Okay. I'm gonna make a motion to approve PZ 22-5, amend special permit for addition to existing bottling structure, 136 Penny Hill Road, owner Casals Patricia et al., applicant Sean Casals. This approval is granted subject to conformance with the application materials as being modified by the commission and this approval, and the following conditions and/or modifications. Conditions. 1, any changes to the location or increases in size of the proposed addition shall require review by the commission. 2, any change in the use of the proposed addition beyond warehouse, storage, or office space will require a modification of this special permit. 3, the addition's facade shall be consistent with the existing building. 4, any exterior building or site lighting shall be full cutoff fixtures and not project light beyond the property line. 5, following completion of the addition and to the extent practical, a portion of the semi-trailers currently being utilized for storage should be removed. 6, Prior to the issuance of a permit, a copy of the special permit shall be filed in the town clerk's office. 7, reference is hereby made to a previously approved and valid inland wetland and watercourses commission permit number IW 2016-2.
Okay. I'll second it. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Great. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Welcome.
Good
Have a
luck.
good night.
Take care.
Yep,
Thank
good
you.
Good luck,
luck.
Sean.
Thank you.
All right, item 2 under unfinished business, PZ 22-7. Change from R80 to design commercial, 25 Maholiak Road. Owner CLB Willington LLC, applicant William Clark. All right, we have anybody
make a
else
motion.
want to read this one?
John did a good job. John?
He did, but I try to spread the love.
I can do it if you want.
Go ahead, Rebecca. You haven't done one.
Okay. I move to approve PZ 22-7 zone change from R80 to DC Design Commercial, 25 Maholiak Road, owner CLB Willington LLC, applicant William Clark. This approval is granted subject to conformance with the application materials as may be modified by the commission in this approval and the following conditions and or modifications. Finding: 1, the pre-existing non-conforming use of this property was established prior to the adoption of zoning in Willington. 2, the previous expansion of the DC zone to 3 Polster Road and the extension of the zone limits to include 25 Maholiak Road will bring the total area for this portion of the DC zone to 50.496 acres. Conditions: 1, all future use, existing or proposed, shall be subject to the standards established by the designated commercial zone. 2, a copy of this approval shall be filed in the town clerk's office within 90 days of the expiration of the appeal period.
Okay. We have a
Second.
second.
I'll second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right,
Thank you.
good luck.
Yep.
Item
Good luck, Chris.
3,
Thank you.
PZ 22-4, proposed zoning regulation, section 12.5, new strategic development zone or SDZ, applicant, the Planning and Zoning Commission.
So the final version that was included with the link has been updated to include some comments related to fire suppression. We also had a couple of questions at the last meeting about just sort of the process, and I kind of went through my notes to make sure that there wasn't a more clear way to describe it, but I think the way that it's written is fairly clear. There weren't any additional comments or needs for actually changing the content. There's some stylistic stuff related to the formatting of the section numbers and calling it A versus 1 or whatever, but we will work that into the zoning regs when it gets codified, essentially. As I mentioned, we're working on getting the regs written into a new format so we can get them on the website more user friendly. So they'll match that organizational structure when we get to that point.
All right, do we need a draft motion for this one or just read it off the page?
Yeah, I mean, I have one and I can share it. So you can see what we've got.
That's easy.
Yeah, that's an easy one. Bob, you want to grab this one? Or Joe?
Oh,
One of you guys? All right,
yeah, I'll take a shot at it.
all right.
Proposed text amendment, section 12.1, new strategic development zone. Motion to approve PZ-22-4. Proposed zoning regulations, section 12.5, new strategic development zone, SDZ. Applicant, Planning and Zoning Commission. Findings, the proposed regulation is consistent with section 8 of the Plan of Conservation and Development.
All right, I'll second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. All right, approval of minutes of March 1st, 2022.
I move that we approve the minutes of March 1st, 2022.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right.
I'm gonna abstain. I was not at that meeting. I'm gonna
Okay.
abstain from.
Thank you, Rebecca. All right, March 15th, 2022. Minutes.
I'll move that we approve the minutes for March 15th, 2022.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. No correspondence, Mike?
No.
All right, item J, public comment. The commission will hear brief comments at this time from anyone wishing to speak. No business can be conducted here, nor can any comments be made about any items on the agenda. Anyone from the public? Okay, staff report and discussion. 1, cannabis establishment regulations discussion.
So following our discussion at the last meeting about the fact that we have a temporary moratorium, which will be due to expire, and so the commission having to sort of make a decision on how it wanted to proceed, I prepared just a basic, not a basic, a draft framework for how we can deal with these uses. And so from what I've taken away from my exposure to this topic and other communities and the regulations that they've drafted and kind of how we're seeing this, and the understanding that at most Willington will receive one of each of those 2 license types for the next 2 years because of the state statute. I prepared the sort of the zoning reg suggestion that's in front of you. I can pull it up and we can go through it if you want, or if you've looked at it, you don't want me to, I don't have to. It's whatever you prefer.
Hey, go ahead and pull it up.
Yeah, please do.
All right. So just to give you a quick, is it big enough? Can you guys see it?
I can see it.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
can see it, yeah.
So again, quick rundown. As of July of 2021, if you do not have a moratorium in place, the state statute says that towns have to deal with these as similar uses. So that's why everybody pushed for the moratorium, so that they didn't have to have a use come through before they were able to develop regs. So if you want to adopt a town-wide prohibition, that needs to be done via an ordinance. If you want to prohibit smoking in town parks or whatever, that's got to be done through an ordinance. You can't prohibit delivery to a customer or qualifying patient or caregiver. There is one of the license types allowed by the state is for a delivery service, so that folks with whether it be a medical condition or what have you, receive this through a secure delivery. No matter what we do, we can't deal with that. As I mentioned, until June 2024, we will only be able to have 1 micro cultivator and 1 retail establishment. And 3% of the tax revenue generated by a retail establishment is transmitted to the host community. The average, based on looking at how Massachusetts facilities go, you're thinking that the average annual sales is about $4 million. And so just doing the math, that revenue would be transmitted directly to the town's general fund, and that comes out of statute.
So what would it be worth on a $4 million of sales out of a place? Is 3%, you're saying?
Yeah, so assuming I did the math right, and I did it a long time ago, it's about $100,000 to $150,000 that would come to the town as tax revenue. And so that
Yeah, 3% straight up is 120,000. Yeah.
So these were, yeah, and these were actually, I didn't do this math. These were projections from the governor's office right after the bill was passed, based on what they were able to obtain from Massachusetts and that sale. So obviously, if you have a facility that does a lot of business, you're going to see more. But that is something that, like I said, is maintained in the host community or municipality. We still have all of the same flexibility or checks and balances that we would for any other use, as far as how many you approve, where they're allowed, hours of operation, signage, traffic. All of those things are still within our wheelhouse to be able to regulate.
That's the key piece of this.
Right. So the other thing that some towns have done is, if there's a facility that's proposed and there's a lot of concerns about traffic, there are traffic standards that are specific to these types of uses that if we got into that situation, you know, we could look to. But frankly, you know, in this area of the state, there's not enough people. But I don't know how to say this in a politically correct way. The other thing that folks are finding in the state and regulators is that the people that are going to procure this illegally are still going to procure it illegally, because
Of course they are. Why are you going to pay top dollar at a place that sells it legally?
exactly. It's much more expensive to buy it from these facilities. They are cashless. So they're not doing all this business, people walking in cash only. There were some concerns that, oh, this is a cash only business. They are cashless. You can't walk in with $100 bill and purchase. They track who comes in, how frequently they come in. They have security systems and redundant security systems required by the state. It's very, very strictly regulated. So really looking at the meat of the reg, starting with section 3, the top just defines everything per the act. This is what I'm proposing. So I'm suggesting that they only be allowed in either the DI or the DC zone, and that they be only by special permit, as sort of delineated there. So the X would mean it would be prohibited, and then the SUP obviously would be a special use permit in accordance with the current regs for how you would consider these. So this is kind of my first go through of how they would be dealt with. The hybrid retailer is someone who deals with the sales of medical marijuana and recreational. That's what the hybrid is. And then the micro cultivator and cultivators, or those are the folks that actually grow that in a restricted facility. And then a retailer would just be a forward-facing retail shop. Anybody have any questions so far?
I guess my question is, once again, like, you know, could, you know, we somehow like lay this on a map where these places could potentially be in town?
So right now, yeah, they would go just in those 2 zones. Some, if you look down into 3.1, you know, I'm saying they shall not be located within the same building as a daycare facility.
I read that already. Yep.
Yeah. But, and I can pull up I mean, I can pull up the zoning map if you want to.
That's what I'd like to look at.
Okay. Let's see here.
Mike, the cultivators would be in an indoor building. It's not anything outdoors, correct?
Yes, so you can regulate that and they would have to demonstrate the outdoor for security reasons. Is not something that you see in the growing season here. The other thing that reminds me, which is worth mentioning, is that the statutes were specifically modified when this was approved so that you cannot grow cannabis and claim an as of right exemption under agriculture. Cannabis is not included in the state's definition for ag. So a farm could not start growing this in a greenhouse and say, we're a farm, we don't need approval. All right. So looking at this map, the areas that are shown in this lightish red are DC, and the areas shown in purple are the DI zone. The dark red is not included. Green, yellow, none of that other stuff is there.
So it's going to be the like light, the pinkish purple there. And
yeah, let me see if I can make this a little bit easier.
So Phillips Plaza could have one.
Yeah, so you'd have West Willington, or in this, was that West? Yeah. Phelps Plaza, these two, the two buildings right on the corner there as you head up the hill, and then the next to Dunkin' Donuts. And then as you move towards the other exit, that section of River Road there is Zone DC. And then when you look at TA, the two basically vacant pieces of land on Turnpike, and then there's the 10-acre parcel that's just next to Love's, are sort of our main areas for DC. And then we kind of got dribs and drabs of it kind of scattered around. But, again, we have, I haven't included the South Willington Village zone at all. So that whole area that you guys, rezoned, which isn't on the map yet, along River, that would not be included. If you want us to, we can.
You got the school pretty close by there.
Yeah. And given that we're trying to make that, a little bit more of a mixed use village feel, I thought it was best to keep this to these other two zones.
Mm.
Would the Phelps crossing zone, that would also probably, there's a daycare right across the street, just right in that area. And then the stuff right down by exit 70 has the park, the town park. I would think those would be two places we wouldn't want to be up close to, so to speak.
Yeah. So, in the regulations, the way that it's currently written is shall not be within the same building. You can certainly adjust that to say shall not be on a property contiguous with, so they couldn't be next to these things. I mean, you can change that however you want. I mean, you could say shall not be within 100 feet, shall not be within 500 feet. I mean, you can tweak that. This is just a starting point. The next step would be to have a public hearing and workshop it and hear from the public. but we can do whatever you are most comfortable with.
So that little development down like where the Eagle is and everything, that would qualify.
So I believe that they are, I'd have to pull up the thing. I believe they're now part of the South Willington Village Zone.
Okay,
I'd have to look to see what the total,
that's where the controversial shop went years ago that was only in business about a year.
oh,
Right.
Remember that, Bob?
Oh, do I? Yeah,
That was quite the public hearing.
it certainly was.
I did not know anything about that.
Oh, people got pretty fired up. It was like a sex shop and
Oh, well,
so
yeah.
forth. And yeah, people were pretty worked up.
In Northborough, Massachusetts, a company came in and said that they wanted to put in a store selling men's clothing and accessories. And they went through the whole process with the planning and zoning, and everybody got their approvals. The accessories turned out to be sex toys and videotapes, etc. Yeah, there was a lot of blowback on that.
Ouch.
Hopefully nothing's quite as controversial here.
No, it's just this kind of stuff just needs to be located right and everything. It's not like this, there's not like nobody's doing anything illegal in town now with like illegal marijuana. I'm sure it never happens here. This is going to
Not
be
a college town.
This is going to be people, looking for it for medicinal use and so forth. I would think that's going to pay the premium. I don't know about $4 million in sales in one of these in Willington. That sounds a little up there, but
Yeah,
maybe in Fairfield County or something.
yeah, those were based on the Massachusetts numbers.
Yeah.
Because the state was trying to, I think, figure out the math on those, before the law was actually passed. So that was as of August of 21. So yeah, it remains to be seen how Connecticut will fare in comparison.
I don't see college kids going there.
No.
Oh, I don't know. It's surprising the demographics when you walk into one of those shops in Massachusetts. I think you'd be very surprised how well attended and the ages of people that are in there.
Yeah. It's definitely an all users type of scenario. And yeah, so just to confirm, all the way to the town line on River Road is part of the South Willington Village Zone. So basically from Fisher Hill Road, where that intersects with River, all the way down River Road to the town line is South Willington Village Zone. So they are no longer zoned DC.
Wow.
Okay.
So that would not be eligible unless you want to include that, and then we'd add a column for that zone.
It would
So
seem that
are we essentially zoning them into just a few locations here at this point?
I mean, we're establishing the zones in which they can be located. I mean, there's the extent of those zones fluctuates. I mean, we just did a zone change today, right? Yeah, we're as far as the total area for those parcels, I don't know, but I'd venture to guess you probably have 15 properties across town in the DC, and maybe 10 to 12 for the DI.
Okay.
it would seem that anybody's going to open an establishment is going to want location close to 84.
Exactly, because you're not going to do this to lose money. You're going to do it to try to make money. And I'm sure like Willimantic, places like that are already courting places like this. So
Yeah,
we'll see.
So do we want to make a bunch of changes to this as it stands, or do you want to put it forward and schedule it for a hearing and workshop it that way.
I think that would be a good idea. I'd like to hear what the public has to say.
Yeah, I'm on that boat.
Yeah, me too.
I think attitudes have changed a lot about this, and it'd be interesting to see what people have to say.
Okay,
Ju-
so,
Just one comment, if I might, I'm wondering if, isn't that a stretch, extending the South Willington zone all the way to the town line? You know, where Golden Eagle is and that area?
isn't it a stretch? What do you mean by stretch?
Well, stretch, when I think of South Willington, I don't think of South Willington as extending much past where the wire company is.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think let me see, for the purposes of trying to create some consistency, this was the zone map. This was what was included when that was actually changed. And I think the goal was to try to create consistency between the areas closer to, like the millworks and this area, because there's sort of these two sections and then this piece in the middle, which is kind of disconnected. And I think that the mill and everything that's going on there is sort of this natural catalyst for things to happen. And then the other side on the town line with some of those other buildings, and we had that zone change for the multifamily or the single family attached. As we start to kind of get those two areas hopefully moving, and they can potentially meet in the middle.
Yep.
But we've also had a number of folks interested in some properties doing some stuff near that self-storage area, and the DI zone doesn't really facilitate the types of uses that would be allowed there now. So rather than kind of chopping it up and having a couple of different zones, because right now we've got the R80, the DI, the DC, and the DCR within that same, you have 4 zones in the same distance. It's not very cohesive.
Okay.
Well,
No,
if you're
I'm
gonna
just,
realize, like, all this-
I'm just throwing that out there, just,
Yeah, they're gonna need some room if it ever like is fully realized, with like shops and microbreweries and housing above some of this stuff. It's gonna be more than just the village section that exists now.
yeah.
Okay, so we've got to do a 30-day notice for the public hearing. So we'll get that scheduled. It'll probably most likely be the second meeting in May that we'll have the hearing.
And we'll be having that in person more than likely.
Yeah, I mean, at the very least, hybrid, but I would say at this point, that's what it looks like.
I heard as of
Yep.
now, unless something's changed, it's all in person.
Right, as of now, May 1st, virtual meetings no longer meet the criteria under FOI.
Well, I'm good with that, but we'll see what happens. But hopefully some people show up.
I think the legislature's looking at it, extending it though, aren't they?
There's a bill that would make virtual meetings and hybrid meetings allowable in perpetuity, so that if you could have a hybrid meeting, or, bad weather, you could have it remote. But there's increasing concern that this will become something that both sides of the table just decide to do battle on, and it will die. So nobody really has a good sense as of late last week as to whether or not it will pass.
Okay.
All right. It is 8:21 PM, meeting adjourned. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Night, everybody.
See you, everybody.
Night.